Started?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. This is Ken Boxer, and it is almost unfathomable that we're at session 9 on these coffee, call-in, and chat sessions. So when the coronavirus came upon us, we thought, what could we do to be of value to our clients that might help them during these challenging times? And one idea we came up with was to offer these sessions. I think one of the things that we'll do, Kamori, if you can put in the chat bar the YouTube link to previous sessions. I see some faces and names of people who've been on earlier sessions. So if you want to log into the YouTube channel, you'll see some of the sessions that we've done on working remotely and managing change and leveraging Zoom and resilience. So, feel free to check those out. We will send all of you an email within 24 hours asking for your feedback on the session. I know that Dory, who is our guest presenter today, and me and Kamori, all of us really value your opinion. And so we'll ask you, what did you think about the session? And I know Kayla is on the line as well. We're mapping out our schedule for the rest of June. And so we'll ask you, any feedback on the session and any thoughts you have about future sessions. And if you can get back to us, that would be great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 3 things before we kick it over to Dory. One, I'm going to introduce her. Second, I'll tell you a little bit about us. Third, I'll talk about ground rules. Next slide. There you go. So a little bit about us. This is year 24 that I've run my own consulting firm, and the mission of Boxer Advisors is to deliver high impact consulting, coaching, training solutions. And we believe that one of the hallmarks to doing what we do is integrating our solutions into the client. And we find when we do that, we get real measurable return on investment. So one of our clients at the National Institutes of Health, they actually commissioned an independent assessment of our work. We did some change management consulting, training, coaching, and they were able to document $500,000 in return on investment from that initiative. So that's pretty good when you can do it. So next slide. The 3 things that we do are helping clients build leadership capabilities, drive organizational change, and engage and retain top talent. Those are the 3 things we do. We're, of course, happy to talk to you about any of those. But before I go too much further, next slide, why don't I introduce our guest facilitator. So I have known Dory since high school. I won't say how many years ago that was because she'll kick me. So Dory is sort of has an interesting background. She is a credentialed mindfulness teacher with the Brown University School of Public Health. She is a certified workplace mindfulness facilitator and a certified yoga instructor. We might have you back to do something on yoga. We could all use that. It would be funny to see me try to do it, as my wife would tell you. But I think not that those things aren't interesting, but she brings to the party 4 decades as an executive in the tech business. So she has been a manager, leader of people, and then decided, to sort of transition into this new arena. So let me welcome Dory to the session today.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate the introduction.
Yeah, well, good to be with you. And I know, during these crazy times, I do think it's important for all of us. If people, Kamori, maybe we can ask a chat question. How many people are familiar with mindfulness? And if you're not, it's something that's getting a lot of attention in the press and social media. A number of our clients are requesting to do something on that topic. And Frank, I think it's even more important these days. So a couple of ground rules before I kick it over to Dory. One, everyone will be muted. I think Dory asked that we hold questions till the end. So as Dory goes through her presentation, if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat bar, or you can save them till the end. And when Dory's done, I think she told me she's going to stop sharing her screen so we can see everyone's photos, and we'll have a quick conversation. We are recording the session, and I believe that we'll send you a link with the follow-up evaluation. Dory, if people want a copy of the slides, are you comfortable sharing those?
Yeah, I can do that. Or I can actually send you a handout to send to people.
I think a handout would be great. So if anyone wants a handout, we're going to give you my email at the end of the session. I know many of you have my email. I'm in touch with you regularly. Just send me an email. We'll send you the handout. I think we're in good shape. And so these go 30 minutes. So I'm going to turn it over to Dory and let her take it from here.
Thank you, Ken. Okay, so we're going to start with what I call a GPS check-in. And I invite everybody to tune into the present moment and check in with how you're feeling right now. So what is your state of being at this very moment? This is a good check-in to do in the morning or before an important meeting, noticing what you feel in your body. Is there pressure? Is there stress, tension, pain? What temperature is the body? Just come to stillness and notice what arises. What emotions come up? Maybe you can name them. Happiness or sadness, interest, overwhelm. And observe your thinking. What topics are arising? Because we're often lost in our thinking and we don't really notice. What is it that we're thinking? And on top of all of that, are we showing ourselves any judgment? Are we judging what comes up? Are we judging how we feel? So let's take a moment and be in the present together so that we can arrive together in this very same place without thinking about where we just were or thinking about where we're about to go. Okay. So to elaborate a bit on my introduction, in Myers-Briggs speech, I am an INFJ, which is also known as an advocate personality type. And what that means is that my passion for my convictions is perfectly capable of carrying me past my breaking point. And it has done so many, many times after 4 decades in tech. I've experienced burnout, I've experienced anxiety, I have experienced panic disorder. And so many years ago, I searched for a way to navigate life. How am I going to get past this? And I looked for science to try to help me find my way through. And what I found was mindfulness, this ability to rewire the brain and determine that I had choice and I could take action. And I'm going to start first with the story of the zebra. The zebra doesn't worry. He just knows I can find grass on this savanna and I'm going to eat it. And his brain knows how to scan for threat. So he doesn't worry about that. He just worries about getting his grass. And then along comes the lion. And now the zebra is scared. because his brain has recognized that there is a physical threat. And cortisol and adrenaline is released in the zebra, and he starts to run. And we know this as the fight, flight, or freeze syndrome. Okay? So this kicks in, and he runs away from the lion until the lion can't catch him anymore. Then what happens at the end? He doesn't go over to social media and start complaining that the lion has chased him. What he does is shake off. We've seen this in our pets as well. They shake off all the cortisol and adrenaline that's in their bodies. They go back to eating the grass, right? So when we have a panic, when something happens to us, we don't act as the zebra and the lion because we have a more developed brain. But our brain developed 1.9 million years ago. And all of these events that have really shaped how we are and how we think today have happened very recently, and our brain has not adapted to this. So we tend to respond to everything in life that affects us as though we're in physical danger. Okay? And this leaves us in a very heightened state of alert because the cortisol set point just keeps rising. We have an event and then we worry about it. And then we have another event and we worry about it. And the cortisol never comes down. And this leaves us open to burnout, anxiety, and illness. And the reason all of this happens is because there's a part of the brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala kicks in this survival mechanism. And it's designed to kick in for physical danger, but we allow it to kick in for everything else that's happening in our lives. Whether the kids are screaming, or worried about getting a new job, or we don't like somebody's response to one of our comments, the amygdala hijacks us away from actually thinking with the front part of our brain that we have been blessed to have. So we end up with high blood pressure, heart disease, illnesses of all types, colitis, depression, anxiety, and a reduced immune system. And we end up like this. We're in constant state of alert, constant state of panic, and this is when we bring mindfulness to play. Because mindfulness allows us to make a choice that we're not going to allow the amygdala to hijack our brain into anxiety, but that we have choices to look at what's going on in context and make logical decisions about how we wish to proceed. And we don't do this as a regular course of events because our minds are often a million miles away. We're lost in thought. So like, when we were allowed to drive to work, have you ever noticed that when you get to work, you didn't remember that left turn or stopping at that light or passing the school? You know, mindfulness allows us to be more deliberate, to really notice what's going on moment by moment, and to be able to deploy our attention and get this innate capacity to know what's going on. So mindfulness is not any of these. It's not a technique or a tool or some goal in life. It is also not spiritual or religious. So I want to be very clear that the practices that we do are secular, and we want them to be open and welcome to everyone. Okay? But it's good to be aware that the practices do have their roots in Buddhism. And these roots have now been supported by science. So that's the first thing I want to make sure everyone understands. Secondly, this practice isn't for everyone. If you're going through a difficult time in your life, it may be extremely helpful and allow you to get past what you're dealing with, or it might bring up a trauma and it might be a hindrance. So be aware that you have to decide for yourself whether a mindfulness practice will help you at this very point in time. And finally, mindfulness is not about having a relaxed, calm mind. And this is what people believe in meditation, is that one should be blank and empty. And the mind can't be blank and empty. The mind, according to a study from Harvard, wanders 47% of the time. So thoughts will constantly keep coming up. And we're not looking to relax. We're looking to be aware. So what is mindfulness? the definition from Jon Kabat-Zinn, who is considered the founder of mindfulness in the West, says mindfulness is paying attention in a very particular way, and that is on purpose, in the present moment, and without judgment. So it's a method of shifting our attention inward to our thoughts and our feelings and our actions without judging them. And this allows us to regain balance, okay, so that we can contextually respond to the emotional things that happen in our lives, as opposed to allowing the brain to be hijacked and responding in a way that we feel there is physical threat. And this allows us to recognize all our patterns and our emotional narratives that go on in our brains, and instead relate to what's happening in the present moment. So there's a lot of research, and the research has grown exponentially in the neurosciences on the benefits of mindfulness. And what we're seeing is that we can shift our perspective and set points. So we first see enormous amounts of stress reduction. And the reason we feel stress is because we don't think we have the resources to handle what's going on around us. So instead of dealing with that threat through the fight, flight, freeze syndrome, we want to call on mindfulness so that we can accept what's happening to us and show ourselves self-compassion. And the studies have shown that this benefits everything from stronger relationships to higher levels of leadership performance. It does produce a sense of calm and reduced anxiety, reduced depression and blood pressure, and improved quality of attention. It gives us more creativity in problem solving. We're seeing increased immune function, which is super important right now. And we just have an overall resiliency that comes from mindfulness. So to just show you a few things in the brain that is happening when one practices, scientists have done fMRI scans to see how the brain actually physically changes. And there are some really fascinating results. So first of all, mindfulness and stress. We talked about the amygdala hijacking the brain. Research has shown that after practicing mindfulness, the amygdala is less reactive, and it also becomes smaller. Regarding creativity, the prefrontal cortex is where we would like to redirect our attention when we're in an emotional situation. This is turning the brain back on. Sometimes our brains, I say they go offline because the amygdala has just grabbed them away. But we put them back online by re-engaging that prefrontal cortex. And we have seen increases in planning, problem solving, and emotional control, emotional intelligence. And when we practice mindfulness, we're seeing that the front part of the brain, which generally thins as we get older, actually thickens when we have a mindfulness practice. And the final thing that we're seeing is improved memory in the hippocampus. This area is also becoming thicker. Okay, so that's the science behind it. And I'm going to stop my screen share now and ask everyone, if you're not already in gallery view, you can find that in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. And we're going to do a short mindfulness practice together. So some attitudes that might help you in starting a mindfulness practice is to remember these 4 things. One is to begin with no expectations. You're not striving to get relaxed or to clear your mind or get enlightened, okay? We're just practicing seeing and accepting things as they are. Second one is to have no judgment, not to get caught up in what you like and what you dislike, okay? The third is to be an observer, noticing your thoughts as they come and go. And noticing them doesn't mean that we accept what we find, okay? It doesn't mean that we're passively resigned to what we find, but it merely means a willingness to see things as they are happening. And finally, have a beginner's mind. Just accept each experience as fresh and new and drop any preconceived notions or biases and see what comes up. So we're going to practice this right now together for just a few minutes. And I'm going to ask everyone to come to the edge of your seat so that you're not sinking back into your chair. And we're going to try to get into a place of stillness. Placing your feet flat on the floor. And gently closing your eyes or lowering your gaze if you prefer to leave the eyes open. And I will guide you through this. You're going to get comfortable, but not too comfortable. Your hands can fall onto your thighs or onto your knees or cupped in your lap with the palms up. Noticing the shoulders and whether they're pulled down from the ears. Dropping their tongue from the roof of your mouth. And being alert, awake, and present, putting out the welcome mat for whatever arises. And now sensing into the body to where your bottom is touching the chair, and your hands are touching your lap, and your feet are touching the floor. And allowing everything else to fall into the background and feeling the whole body breathing. Each time your mind begins to wander from the contact points, you'll notice thoughts coming and going. And just like clouds in the sky, allow them to arise and drift away. But as you get caught up in a thought, be aware of your attention. When you realize you're in that thought stream, then you're back to awareness again. When the mind wanders and we notice it and acknowledge it and come back to the present, that is mindfulness, that is awareness. So each time the mind begins to drift, come back to the anchor points of your hands and your feet and begin again. Not trying to clear the mind, but trying to focus and concentrate the mind. And being gentle and understanding without any judgment, no matter how many times we have to gently guide the mind back. Noticing how focused we are, that our thoughts are not letting us get engaged with them, that we can control how much engagement we want at any given time. And now broadening our awareness back to our bodies, sitting and breathing in this room and in this space. Slowly bringing some stillness back into the body. And when you're ready, opening your eyes. Okay. So that was an extremely short practice. It's hard in a half an hour to really convey the power of the practice. But I'd like to use this time that we have left to entertain any questions or even observations about what came up while you were practicing. And actually just going to unmute people, and you feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like to just share what came up or what questions you might have about a mindfulness practice for yourself.
Hey, Dory, this is Ken. Before we people, I know sometimes we say 9:30 to 10. We've got 4 minutes left. Are you willing to stick around for a couple more minutes after 10, or do you have to go at 10?
I can be here as long as you'd like.
Okay. Why don't we do this? Why don't I handle a couple of follow-up things? So, Kamori, if you can post
Okay.
Some of the follow-up sessions that we've got going on the chat bar, that would be great. We're going to send you, Dory was generous, and we have some suggestions if people are interested in reading more on this topic. Dory has suggested a number of books. We're going to send those to you in a follow-up email. And so if you're interested, number two, Dory has been, again, couldn't be more generous. She has said that if anyone is interested in delving into this concept in more detail, she's willing to offer a complimentary 30-minute follow-up coaching session. I may take you up on that. And so if anyone's interested in that, just send me an email. And if you're interested in exploring this in more detail, either for yourself or your organization, Dory does obviously, lots of training in this that's longer than 30 minutes, and she can do that. She does consults with people individually. We've got executive coaches that can help you address this issue. So those are some ways that you can follow up on this topic. Before we go to questions, and I know I have a couple, Dory, before we end, because I know some people may have to exit at 10, I want to thank you for doing this. This was great, and I know I feel a little bit more centered and more relaxed as a result of this. So thank you for doing this. And so now I'll let, if you want to, however you want to do it, Dory, if you want to stop sharing and just have a conversation,
Yeah.
we can do that. And if people want to stick around for a few minutes after 10. So I assume the two questions, A, what was their experience in
Yes.
the exercise, and or do they have any questions about mindfulness? Is that
Correct.
you're asking? Great. So does anyone, A, have any reactions to the little practice and or any questions for Dory? I have a question, Dory, for you. This is Ken. Yes?
Yes.
So I would say the question I have is, why is it so difficult for some leaders to try to practice mindfulness? What are some of the obstacles that you've seen in working with some of your clients?
Yeah, so it's a great question, Ken. I believe that, mindfulness practice is not easy. It's not easy for anyone to accept that there's action in the brain, and that we tend to want to multitask and deal with everything all at one time.
Yes.
So what we notice is that if we take the time to do this mindfulness practice, it's very similar to going to the gym. So if I want to work my bicep, I'm going to get a weight of a particular type, and I'm going to do reps over and over again until I build that muscle. What we're doing with mindfulness practice is building the muscle of the brain. We're building the prefrontal cortex at the same time that we're reducing the amygdala, so that we have this capacity to have just better relations with people, and as well as better problem solving skills. And so it's hard for people to sit still. I practice for 40 minutes every morning. And it is difficult for people to sit still and believe that something they can't see is actually strengthening the brain. And that's why we bring in the science, so that, you know, for leaders to be able to see the science and see the results of other leaders and what they have been able to do by having a mindfulness practice, I think is very valuable. And doing that as a teacher or as a consultant adds a lot of value to the practice, and allows people to engage and ask these questions like we're doing now, so that they can put it in the context of their own organization.
Robert, you have another question. Fire away. Or you might have either a question or a reaction. Yeah.
Okay. How would you describe the difference between a mindfulness session and a meditation?
That's a great question. So mindfulness in general is a way of being, deploying your attention on purpose and the present moment and without judgment throughout your
Present
day.
moment. Okay.
Yes, throughout your day. Meditation is concentrating and focusing on a single object. So when we bring those two together, mindfulness and meditation, and we call it mindfulness meditation, the object that we're focusing on during meditation is our attention. It's bringing back the mind to the present moment.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we're anchoring in the present moment. There are other types of meditation like Zen, where you really are trying to clear the mind, and those promote relaxation. Whereas mindfulness meditation is not designed to promote relaxation, although it does bring a lot of calm, as Ken had said. But it's designed to, as I was saying, to use the mind, the brain as a muscle, and to strengthen our ability to concentrate and understand what's going on around us within context.
Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you for
Anyone
that
else have
question.
another, either a observation about the practice or a question for Dory? I have another one, Dory. I'll ask you another one. So I'm wondering, what's your about either a, the importance of practicing mindfulness, or the challenge of practicing mindfulness, given, you know, that we're all dealing with some restrictions with the coronavirus pandemic? What's your perspective on that? I assume that there's something that you would have to say on that topic. So
Yeah, yes. And in fact, I'm part of a group called Meditate Together that Mindful Leader has put together, and I'm a volunteer. And we provide mindfulness every hour on the hour, around the clock. So this is going on throughout the world. We have about 4,000 people signed up for this, where we just get together for a half an hour at a time and practice. We're all, the problems that we're having right now really have to do with the fact that uncertainty breeds anxiety. So when we're uncertain about what's going on in the world, and right now we all are, we get very anxious. And then when we see how other people are reacting to it around us, we see at the beginning, we saw all the hoarding of materials in the stores and whatever. So then we start to panic, and our anxiety actually becomes a social contagion. It becomes its own virus. So what mindfulness is doing for people is allowing people to just reconnect with who they are, realizing what's important in life, realizing also that we are part of a very large system. We don't stand alone, and our egos don't stand alone. We're part of humanity. We're part of the animal kingdom. We're part of the world as a whole. And mindfulness allows us to reconnect in these ways, to see the relationships between who we are and what the rest of the world is, and just our perspective changes, and we become more compassionate about what we're experiencing first. And once we have more compassion for ourselves, we can have more compassion for those around us who are suffering right now.
That's great. Thank you. That's very helpful. Anyone have another either observation about the practice or a question for Dory? Or are we good to go for today? Going once, going twice. Dory, I'm going to again say thank you. This was great. Really very, very helpful. I appreciate you doing this. I hope that you, Dory, have a great rest of the day. I hope everyone else does. And Dory, what would be one final thought that you might have as people exit stage left?
I think mindfulness is a way of being, as opposed to something that one does. So to get out of doing and into being, and it's not an easy thing to do. We never say that it's an easy thing to do. So call upon the resources. I'll send Ken a document that has the books. It has some articles.
Right.
I'm available for consult. I do teaching. I do facilitation. I help organizations put together mindfulness programs in their organizations. But it always starts with the individual. It starts with the self. And so if you are interested in seeing whether a mindfulness practice will be valuable for yourself, as I said, it's not for everyone, but I'm happy to be here. And if it's for you, help you find your way through it.
That's great. This was great. Thank you so much, Dory. I appreciate it. Everyone else, thanks for logging in. Have a great rest of the day. Bye now.
Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.